over on the left, we have Emma playing humans. And if you don't know the story behind this one, I think a lot of us have been in this scenario where you drive across state lines to play a Magic tournament, and then you end up playing round one against your roommate who you drove to the tournament with. Her opponent is Jake Humphries.
Yeah, we've seen these two play on teams together at various times throughout the tour and get to play against each other. Dredge versus humans, the two decks we were really highlighting talking there.
Yeah, kind of the top two decks of the format. Jake's going to start off here on a turn one Shriekhorn. And we'll get things moving. Do you have a deck that you like in this matchup?
The conversation has been that humans is better against Dredge than a lot of decks in game one, and Emma has showed up with some graveyard hate in the sideboard. I'm going to err on the side of humans here, though Jake having the play in game one here is a pretty significant factor.
Yeah, both decks really doing what they want to on the first turn. Jake with a Shriekhorn, Emma with an Aether Vial, and Jake's Shriekhorn is going to do some work. It mills into Golgari Thug, so we can get the dredging started here on the second turn, and that dredging will put a Narcomoeba onto the battlefield.
Yeah, also mills over a Stinkweed Imp and Life from the Loam. He's kind of going off here.
Conflagrate for 0, and then a land to get back a Bloodghast.
Casting the Conflagrate, that's obviously worse than Faithless Looting to put it in the graveyard, but the presence of Conflagrate in the graveyard is massively impactful in this matchup.
Right, and that's just showing some respect to it. He wants to make sure he has one of those in the yard as soon as next turn.
Right, and you saw the second land there was just basic forest, so he wants to use this red mana now because it's probably going to be difficult for him to cast Conflagrate and flash it back on the same turn because the flashback is also double red.
Yeah. Emma, Vials in, Champion of the Parish, makes Thalia. Now, of note, both her lands here are Horizon Canopies, and that's actually, Dredge is a damage-based deck.
Yeah, with the addition of Creeping Chill as well, that damage can really add up. You can kind of get chip-shotted out of the game now. Real quick, I'm going to check my Dredge 3 or more box.
That is a free space
It's
this
kind
weekend.
of a free roll.
Is it 3 or more or 4 more?
It's
Does it have
3
to be
or
a
more.
Thug?
Yeah, we saw Thug, but
Yeah, Life from the Loam would have done it.
Dredge other than Deckmore Salvage is kind of what the square says.
Now, Ryan, Jake milled once on the end step, but he actually, instead of dredging that Stinkweed Imp, he took a natural draw for the turn, and that's pretty unusual for Dredge.
Yeah, and it looks like the issue is he's stuck on lands, and the reason that he's not dredging Life from the Loam is he has to deal with Thalia before he can cast Life from the Loam, and because he has Red Source Basic Forest, he can't flashback Conflagrate even if he had the 1 extra to pay for it, so he really just needs to find a land naturally here.
If Emma's second creature was anything other than Thalia, this turn would have been pretty easy. He'd dredge Loam, he'd cast it, get back some lands, make a land drop, and move on. But because it's specifically Thalia, this was a really weak turn for the dredge player.
Yes. He will still get to kind of go with these Shriekhorns. If he can get really fortunate on finding some Creeping Chills, he might still be able to salvage this, but he's in trouble.
Oh my, and a huge turn from Emma. So I'm going to walk through it as this has gone pretty fast. Casts Champion of the Parish, using mana. Casts Thalia's Lieutenant, losing mana. Trigger on the stack, Vials in Meddling Mage, so that will see the Thalia's Lieutenant. Meddling Mage is going to name Conflagrate, and then we're going to put a lot of dice on the creatures here.
Oh yeah, these creatures get very large very quickly. The Lieutenant double triggers the Champion of the Parish, once for itself, once for the Champion. There's already a ton of damage coming across the table here, and the Meddling Mage named Conflagrate, which would be the best thing that Humphries had if he can naturally draw a red source of mana.
So Shriekhorn himself, and you see this attack looks to be coming in for 9. He does hit 1 Crippling Chill. Emma's down to 11, and we should take note of this because Emma's done so much damage on these Horizon Canopies that Jake does have a sneaky out here.
Yeah, if he just kind of hit all his Creeping Chills, then theoretically the Narcomoeba could come across. He also pads his life total when he finds them, though the bigger upset there was the first Shriekhorn milled over 2 red lands, and he really needed to draw that.
And you see he takes another natural draw, and he will pick up the cards. With Meddling Mage on Conflagrate, is there even anything he's drawing to at that point?
At that point, he's in a lot of trouble. It might have been something like he was looking to hard cast a Stinkweed Imp just to get a blocker out there.
Sure, and that gives him maybe 1 turn based
Right.
on the speed Emma's moving at.
You could hope to mill over some Narcomoebas as well, give him some more chump blockers, or even just a way to poke in on top of getting really lucky on the Creeping Chill front.
So game 1 goes to Emma Handy and to humans. We'll take a look at some sideboard options. Starting on Dredge's side, this is typically a deck that gets weaker after sideboarding, whether you're talking about Legacy Dredge or Modern Dredge.
Right, and you see a lot of the sideboard here is kind of explicitly for the mirror,
right,
or a counter sideboard strategy. So you go down there, he has 4 Lay Out of the Void. That's going to be mostly for the mirror, not impactful here. 3 Nature's Claim, 3 Lightning Axe, 2 Ancient Grudge, 2 Thoughtseize, and an Assassin's Trophy. So the Thoughtseize is going to be for more spell-based decks. That doesn't really come into play here.
Yeah.
The Lightning Axes are fine. Some number to that makes a lot of sense. Meddling Mage can be a problem. You saw in that game Thalia was a big problem. It's also just a nice discard outlet. That card's pretty reasonable. And then Jake's going to ask himself, how much of this stuff does he want to bring in knowing that Emma has sideboard Relic of Progenitus, or not Relic,
Grafdigger's Cage.
Grafdigger's Cage is the one, and she also has a Tormod's Crypt in the board as well. You kind of want to have some number of answers to that. The easy one is the Assassin's Trophy. That can also hit creatures, no matter what the problem is. Trophy solves it. But there's a reasonable argument to reach for some of this other stuff, be it Nature's Claim or Ancient Grudge, some small number of copies of those, just because Grafdigger's Cage is often just lights out.
Yeah, the card's super powerful in the matchup. So you may be forced to board in some amount of Nature's Claim. I know Dark Blast is a great card in the matchup. It's not in the sideboard. He does have 1 copy in the main, so he has that already in.
Yeah, that's a good one to have access to. It is notable that Humans is an Ether Vial deck, so your Artifact Destruction has a little bit extra mileage there. This isn't the matchup where Vial is the most impactful. Humans kind of just has to get on board quickly, so there's not that much time to leverage that. But destroying it can be worth something.
All right, now on Emma Handy's side, you did talk about those 2 Grafdigger's Cages. I do want to look at the other things she has available. 3 Knight of Autumn, 2 Auriok Champion, 2 Izzet Staticaster, 2 Gaddock Teague, a Tormod's Crypt. That's not stock here, but I mean, it's real respect for Dredge that we're starting to see that card in sideboards.
Yes.
A Sin Collector, a Whirler Rogue, and a Dismember.
Yes, so that Tormod's Crypt, that third piece of graveyard hate to go with those Grafdigger's Cages, that's going to be excellent. Izzet Staticaster is really powerful in this matchup. Dredge is bringing Bloodghast, Narcomoebas to the table. That cleans all that stuff up every turn. Just kind of a permanent solution to Bloodghast. There's a lot to like there. And then I don't mind Whirler Rogue in this matchup, actually. It just creates a couple flyers there so you can deal with Narcomoebas, what have you. Also just makes some creature unblockable, as the battlefield can get a little gummed up in this matchup.
So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the StarCityGames.com weekly sale, we've been giving up to 50% off select promotional cards, and that's been going on all week. You still have time, though, to check out those deals. The sale goes all the way through the weekend. Head on over to StarCityGames.com/weekly sale.
Starting to come around on those. You see that F&M promo opt, the all-blue version. At first I was a little skeptical, but once I started seeing them actually in person, they look really nice.
Stoneforge Mystic here. That was a GP promo, I believe.
Yeah.
A bit ago.
Get ahead of that before people assume that it's going to be unbanned and buy a bunch of copies before the BNR update.
So, I want to talk about this Tormod's Crypt in Emma's sideboard. Specifically, it's Tormod's Crypt instead of a more powerful graveyard sweeper like Relic of Progenitus. But I don't mean more powerful, I mean something that can gain you back the card advantage. A lot of times we're going to see decks go toward cards like Relic. Is Dredge so good right now that we just don't have time to pay that mana?
On the draw, it's really difficult to actually meaningfully use Relic of Progenitus. It's the same problem that Rest in Peace has, where sometimes the Dredge player just does too much stuff on turn 1 into turn 2. If they're just casting 2 Faithless Lootings or Faithless Looting Cathartic Reunion on their second turn, you've already lost the game. Like, your graveyard hate that's slower than that is not going to play, and that's why you see Grafdigger's Cage, that's why you see Tormod's Crypt.
Got to be on the receiving end of that one. With the Team BCW challenge yesterday, I've got right in the Charlotte area. It was at Scott's Collectibles. Yeah, got to face down a turn 2 Cathartic Reunion. Yeah, when they're on the play and hit that, it doesn't matter if you're great. You know, I think I had a Bazooka Bog in my hand, and boy, were we way too late on that.
Yeah. Reunion being both the discard outlet and the ability to just dredge immediately. The fact that you can find additional dredgers in the middle of the resolution because you replace every individual draw, you check dredgers on the graveyard. That card's just so explosively powerful for the deck.
Yeah, they go from having nothing in play to then they tap 2 lands and suddenly they have 12 cards in their graveyard and like 7 power in play.
Yeah.
So, ooh.
Reasonable. Good return on the 2-mana investment.
Some mulliganing happening here. Jake on 6 on the play. He's scrying to the bottom. Emma has kept on 5. She is contemplating her scry. Looks like it will be kept on top.
Dredge is a deck that definitely has to mulligan a lot to find functional hands, and the difference between the functional and non-functional doesn't have very much to do with cards in hand. And then on Emma's side, playing humans, or just any deck playing against Dredge, you kind of need to mulligan to graveyard hate.
Faithless Looting from Jake discards Narcomoeba and Stinkweed Imp. The remains of his hand, it looks like he has another Narcomoeba, a Lightning Axe, and a Cathartic Reunion, and a second land.
This is a solid hand. The mana's a little shaky. You never really want to lead on Gemstone Mine. But he is dredging.
How about this? Emma with Termod's Crypt, though, for the turn. Jake dredges 5, and now, still in his draw, we'll see whether Emma wants to Crypt. There was a Bloodghast, and it looks like that is enough to earn the Termod's Crypt. Emma will exile it all away. Of note here, the one of Dark Blast in his main deck was hit on that Termod's Crypt.
Yeah, that's a nice one to get out. That'll keep your Thalias safe down the line.
Maybe your noble hierarchs.
Yeah.
However, and there's some power of Dredge. Here's Cathartic Reunion from Jake. Discard Stinkweed Imp and Narcomoeba. First Dredge is 5, and that 5th card hits a second Stinkweed Imp. We are still going.
And a Bloodghast and a Creeping Chill.
Not even. And another one. Another Stinkweed Imp on the 5th card.
Ugh.
Mills over 5 more. I don't think... So he's got all these Stinkweed Imps in hand, and 1 Creeping Chill hits. Graveyard has Bloodghast, Prized Amalgam, Life from the Loam, Faithless Looting, Conflagrate. So nothing this turn, but boy, are we set up for a decent next turn.
Yes. Depending what Emma has here, she really wants a Meddling Mage or a Thalia. Pretty easy script for Humphries to follow is dredge Life from the Loam, cast that, guarantee a land drop, get your Bloodghast back, start gassing up your hand for that Conflagrate.
She needs another Termod script.
Right? That's the other thing about Dredge. You need your graveyard hate to come in early and often.
Yeah.
Until the game is over, that graveyard's going to keep filling itself.
Now, when Jake casts the Life from the Loam, he will lose this Gemstone Mine. How much of a concern is that?
It's not a huge concern given that he's immediately just getting 3 land drops. So assuming that there's no Thalia, no Meddling Mage, and he can cast Life from the Loam on the following turn, that means even if he has to use the mine next turn, he'll still be ending that turn with 2 lands and have a 3rd, 4th land drop rolled up.
See what Emma has. 2 mana here. That Thalia or Meddling Mage mentioned both pretty good here. Not Thalia, it's just Thalia's Lieutenant. She will attack in for 2. That does not feel like it will be enough.
Yeah, that's considerably weaker. What the plan here is for Emma is to just get some power on the battlefield. Maybe if she can leverage enough additional humans, more Thalia's attendants, she can get enough power where Humphries Conflagrate's a little bit overloaded.
And as you mentioned, Jake dredges Life from the Loam, gets back Gemstone Mine, Copperline Gorge, Wooded Foothills. He actually thinks twice on the Wooded Foothills for basic mountain, and this makes sense. You see in his graveyard, we have a basic mountain in his yard, one he got back, a Stomping Ground. He actually has hit a lot of his fetchable red sources.
Yeah, you only get so many of them. It's not too much value in having fetch lands either.
Plays Copperline Gorge, gets back 2 Bloodghasts. I believe we have a Prized Amalgam delay trigger in there too, and we do.
Pretty respectable position from here. He has that Conflagrate hanging out in graveyard, good mix of cards in hand. Another situation where, unless Handy is able to produce Meddling Mage naming Conflagrate, Humphries has a pretty easy Plague Wind turn scripted for next turn.
Champion of the Parish for Emma. Thalia's Lieutenant. That's her last card. The idea here is to grow these creatures out of Conflagrate range.
Yeah, and this is the kind of sequence where she does have pretty substantial power now.
Yeah, 6.
Yep, so coming across for a good amount of damage, but also just has a ton of toughness in the face of getting Conflagrated. You're up to a 4/4 creature in addition to another 3/3 and a 2/3 plus a 1/1 hanging out. Humphries doesn't have enough cards to deal with all of that.
We'll start with 1. There's Lightning Axe plus Stinkweed Imp to take care of the largest creature. He will take 2, go to 15. And I like the sequencing there. Jake waits until she attacks with both creatures so that Exalted won't trigger.
And previously, without that Lightning Axe, the Conflagrate could only do so much, and because he used Gemstone Mine, he's not yet set up to cast Life from the Loam and Conflagrate on the same turn. But because he cleared out the biggest threat, just using the Conflagrate to take care of the champion and the Thalia's Lieutenant is already a very good turn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the floor for what he can do.
Another Dredge 5 off Stinkweed Imp for Jake's turn. Hits 1 Creeping Chill and 1 Narcomoeba. Emma's down to 14. Swing is for 7. That's half the life total. 7 remaining on Emma's side.
Yeah, and there's not much that Emma can do about this attack. She can block or not. If she blocks, these creatures have a way of coming back onto the battlefield, and it just makes it easier to Conflagrate them down. There's more damage going upstairs with the Conflagrate if that's what Jace wants to do anyway.
He will flashback Faithless Looting. First Dredge is Life from the Loam. Second Dredge is Life from the Loam. Just hits 6 cards. Nothing that has a lot of play here, and then he'll discard 2 Stinkweed Imps. Pass the turn. Put 2 more prized amalgams in the graveyard, but no way to get them back.
Just yet.
Yeah.
Those Bloodghast are very likely to be making a return to the graveyard, as Emma doesn't really have good attacks anymore. She has to conserve her life total because she's at 7 and she knows about that Conflagrate. She wants to be attacking because she has to close the game.
She'll cast Phantasmal Image on Thalia's Lieutenant. You're right, though. I mean, those 2 Loams that Jake dredged back, she's got to be concerned just about him casting Loams and Conflagrating eventually here.
Right. Really easy to get lethal just with that Conflagrate. Add in the random Creeping Chill factor. 7 is not a high number.
Those Creeping Chills, that was the card from Guilds of Ravnica that kind of powered Dredge from that Tier 2 deck straight into Tier 1.
Right. Yeah, we've seen a lot of Jeskai on the tour in previous months. You could have made an argument that Dredge was a deck that was maybe a little bit underplayed before Creeping Chill, and that card definitely pushed it over the top.
Oh, see here. It's just another free thing to mill over. Draining your opponent for 3. A lot of times it feels like you start the game at 29 and your opponent starts the game at 11, which just isn't fair at all.
Factor in Shocklands, what have you.
And we see it there. Jake dredges 5 off Stinkweed Imp. He finds another Creeping Chill. Emma's at 7. That Conflagrate just becomes lethal. I think that was his 3rd Creeping Chill of the game. So that 29 to 11 comparison, that's not even exaggerating. That's just what we did.
I would accept those starting life totals. That is a fine position to start from.
And it makes cards just like, when you start the game at 11, 1 prized amalgam hit doesn't feel trivial anymore.
Right. This is also a format. We didn't really see this element play out in that game, but in game 1, Emma led on a bunch of Horizon Canopies. When you're also damaging yourself with your mana, that makes your life total even lower. It's that much easier to close with a Conflagrate.
Exactly. I feel like Dredge they can chip damage you out so much more easily now.
Yes. And also there's just kind of this unspoken synergy between Bloodghast and Creeping Chill, where sometimes if you have a lot of experience with the matchup, you think, all right, well, on this turn, I've stabilized at 13, 14, what have you. 1 or 2 Creeping Chills, suddenly the Bloodghasts have haste because you have 10 or less life.
Yeah, step 1, flip 4 Creeping Chills. Step 2, your Bloodghasts have haste.
Right.
We're going to give my first card today a bingo. A card having 5 or more counters. Emma has a Champion of the Parish that has hit that this game. It was game 1. I'm going to take it anyway.
I have a Conflagrate for 2 or more damage, but we didn't actually see that one get cast.
I saw one for 0.
Right. That's less than 2.
And here's the bad thing. I have Spellcast with Flashback, so I feel like I'm going to get a square if you ever get that one.
Yeah, my Conflagrate square is in one of those really bad corner adjacent spots as well. So I kind of don't care about it.
Those are the worst, I think just objectively the worst squares on the bingo board.
Yes. Yeah, casual bingo players don't. They tend to celebrate square by square, but we seasoned bingo veterans, we know which squares we're gunning for. Yeah,
those the edge, the non-corner edge pieces, we're a little off those ones.
Yeah, those Sunday church bingo players, they're going to celebrate non-corner edge, but You know, we know the true value. One square is not one square.
At least the middle edge lines up with the free space.
Yes.
Right? So it's got that, the second and fourth column edge pieces. Those were off those ones.
It's an amateur square. I assume that your flashback is in a better position.
Nope,
Okay,
exactly
so
the same.
it's just the same. All right, it's a wash. May as well just both check it.
Soon. I think we're going to get that today. Someone will flash back a conflict
There's a
rate.
reasonable chance.
Unless I've really misread the metagame.
Right. Yeah, this is something that was actually really surprising. The paper modern metagame generally moves very slowly, with the exception of when the format is just totally broken. An example of that, after the Eldrazi Pro Tour, the next week the field was already just all Eldrazi. People got that one pretty quick. But last weekend I was really surprised at how quickly how many players had picked up Creeping Chill Dredge. We even saw Caleb Shearer, the Storm Master, the Storm Counter himself, a player who I didn't even think owned non-blue-red modern cards, playing the Dredge deck.
I'm handy on 6 here for game number 3. I absolutely agree. And from what I've heard, it's not just paper. Magic Online apparently has already gotten to a point. A lot of times Magic Online's a couple weeks ahead of paper Magic. Not only was Dredge good, we're almost at the point where Dredge is bad on Magic Online.
Right. Yeah, once it becomes good and very present, you start stocking up your graveyard with a bunch of ley lines, what have you, and Dredge can be hated out. That much is true.
Cavern of Souls on Human for Emma makes Noble Hierarch. Jake's turn when plays a Shriekhorn.
Both decks kind of more or less sticking to the script so far. We'll see if Emma can produce some graveyard hate. She'd really love to have a Grafdigger's Cage here.
Yeah, Shriekhorn's actually a change with the Creeping Chill versions. Previously, you would see decks play Insolent Neonate in this spot, but because of Creeping Chill, it looks like they just want more raw mill.
Right. There's just a lot more incentive to put cards directly from your library into your graveyard. And the Shriekhorn is just more looks. Unless you already have the Dredger in your hand, the Neonate's not doing very much. The Shriekhorn is just kind of a one card that can let you keep a hand.
Mantis Rider from Emma attacks for 4. We will see Narcomoeba off this Shriekhorn if Jake wants to block, but he does not. Also mills Life from the Loam. Upkeep, he'll see if he can do better. He cannot. It's Prized Amalgam. He will dredge that Life from the Loam, and no creature just yet for the Amalgam.
There is a Conflagrate, though. And it looks like he has a second land. We might see him just go for a Plague Wind here.
So he'd pitch almost his whole hand, and he just deal 3 in 1?
Yes.
Sure, I'm in.
Kind of depends how much you care about the Mantis Rider. We saw him already saying, all right, I'm not going to chump block with my Narcomoeba. Depending what he's able to discard, if he already had like a Bloodghast in hand, a Stinkweed Imp, what have you. Other thing that we saw him dredge Life from the Loam there. He could just cast that, get that back in the graveyard, and set him up with another Dredger. You know, that goes in the graveyard either way. You can either cast the Life from the Loam or discard it to the Conflagrate.
He is really thinking about it. I think we have 6 cards in hand, so he'd even get to keep a couple of them.
There's some creatures that you kind of want to save the Conflagrate for, something like Thalia, Guardian of the Thraben, next turn.
Okay.
But you can't save it for Meddling Mage, because Meddling Mage just shows up, names Conflagrate.
And then you're good.
Yeah. So this might not be the most enticing battlefield to go for the Conflagrate, but there's always that question mark on whether or not you'll actually be able to do it next turn when you play against a Meddling Mage deck.
He is already down to 12, and that looks like this earns the Conflagrate. So he discards Life from the Loam, Prized Amalgam, and Creeping Chill. Takes care of both creatures. When you have 2 Amalgams, it does change the math a bit here. You'd really like to get them all in the graveyard.
Right.
It sweeps up the board.
And he gets that Dredger in the graveyard, so it looks like Life from the Loam was the best option, but finding a Narcomoeba or a Bloodghast on the following turn would dramatically change his presence on the battlefield.
Yeah, there's no Stinkweed Imp yet, so he's just dredging 3. Still is really hoping to find a way to trigger now what looks to be 3 Prized Amalgams in the graveyard.
Right, and he does have that last counter on the Shriekhorn as well, so he will have 5 looks at it.
All right. See if Emma can rebuild. Just 3 cards remain. She was on a mulligan to 6 on the play here, so it was on fewer resources.
And we have not seen any graveyard hate yet to speak of as well. So fewer resources. She's already been taken down by a Plague Wind. You know, creatures that she's cast so far, they're dead. And we have not seen graveyard hate, which is pretty important in this matchup.
Thalia, the play from Emma. And she'll pass. Upkeep, Jake Mills, 2. Creeping Chill is one of them. 15 and 16. Life totals just kind of equal out for nothing.
And Creeping Chill is pretty new to the format. Some people watching might think, doesn't Jake have to pay 1 for that through the Thalia? No. Creeping Chill just triggers, exiles itself, and you just get that effect.
And now Jake's back to taking that natural draw because of the Thalia. His hand is Life from the Loam. And I believe he's got another 2-mana spell and Cathartic Reunion. And he drew Stinkweed Imp for the turn.
Here's an awkward element as well. He has Dark Blast and Graveyard, but no black mana. So he needs a natural draw for a land and also just a black mana. So for the foreseeable future, he'll be taking these natural draws. We'll see what hand he can produce to the battlefield as well.
Auric Champion from Emma. I'm interested about these natural draws. Is that better than just trying to dredge and get these amalgams into play and just go beating up with them?
Well, the issue is when he could cast Life from the Loam, he was looking for Narcomoeba and Bloodghast. When you don't have the land, it has to be Narcomoeba.
So there's 3 of them. It's not great, is it?
Right. Your odds are much higher of finding just any land. Well, it might be close when you're looking at 3 cards, but it's still not good. And if you miss, you're just doing nothing. Whereas you find the land, you don't just turn on the amalgams immediately this turn. You actually just turn your deck back on.
Well, Thalia's Lieutenant from Emma is going to deal some damage here, swinging in for 5, knocks Jake down to 8. He needs the land. Can he find it? No, he cannot. Passes back. And running out of looks at it, he drew Narcomoeba. So we were supposed to dredge on that one.
Right.
I guess when he's drawing cards naturally, a Faithless Looting's actually also a good draw here.
Right, yeah, you can actually cast the front side of one of those.
Reflector Mage, and is this going to be lethal? Swings in. It's
1 shy.
1 shy, yeah, we're for 7.
It really may as well be, though. With Humphries just naturally drawing, he can only get these tapped amalgams back, what have you. Not much he can do, and yeah. We're going to pack it in. Emma Handy, 2-1 over Jake Humphries.